What makes a good remake? What's the difference between a proper remake and a simple remaster? At first glance, it would be simple. A remaster improves graphics and sounds from the original assets, while a remake recreates everything from the grounds up. But with recent announcements like the Oblivion's so-called remaster, those lines are increasingly blurred. So in this video, I'll explore a little bit what has happened with video game remakes in recent years, and give you 5 criteria that I think are important to judge whether a game is really a remake, and hopefully a good one at that. First up, and this might be a bit of a hot take, but I believe a proper remake needs something that cannot be rushed, enough time. A game that hasn't had the chance to establish a real legacy and hasn't seen a significant generational leap in hardware and its player base probably doesn't need a full remake to begin with. What it might need is a fix. Think about it. If a game gets a remake just a few years after the original release, it often feels more like a remaster or honestly a big patch. We see games getting patched and expanded upon constantly these days, so a true do-over should really be more substantial than that. This is why, for example, the Final Fantasy XIV we know today, as amazing as it is after its relaunch as A Realm Reborn, isn't really a remake in the traditional sense. Yet it is nothing like its first version, released in 2010. After a horrible launch, criticized for many bugs, a convoluted UX, and a lack of content, Square Enix made a smart choice. While they decided to acknowledge its failure and start over, they presented FF14 A Realm Reborn as something between a proper relaunch and a sequel. The story would follow up on the conclusions of the first version and carry over the lore already established, but inscribing all the revamped design and gameplay elements in what was packaged as a new game. It's a do-over, but presenting it as such made no sense either. On the flip side, consider something like The Last of Us Part 1. Now, there was a 9-year gap and the original definitely established a strong legacy. However, since the game had already been remastered on the PS4 and the core gameplay and overall experience didn't change at all, many felt the remake was more of a new-gen remaster than a true reimagining. There wasn't a whole lot of added value in terms of new story or gameplay elements. So, criterion number 1, a good remake usually comes after enough time has passed for the original to build a legacy and for a significant technological jump to warrant a complete overhaul. Building on that, a good remake really needs to consider 2 key audiences. Firstly is for us, old school gamers, the ones who played the original and have that nostalgic connection. We want to relive those experiences but in a new light. Secondly, it needs to appeal to younger players who might be coming to these games and franchises for the first time and have different expectations based on modern gaming standards. A successful remake has to carefully walk this line. We've seen this with the buzz and eventual success around the Silent Hill 2 remake and the upcoming Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Konami seems to be aiming to bring back those of us who were playing in the late 90s and early 2000s, and as I explained in another video, even if some complain about Silent Hill 2, its developers Bloober Team found the perfect balance in the end. The game respects the original material and those among us who had played it, but it also provides an amazing survival horror experience according to modern standard. Another important factor here can be localization. Back in the day, not every amazing game got a worldwide, multi-platform release. Take Live Alive. It was never released outside of Japan originally, so the decision to remake it in a fairly faithful way is totally justifiable because it allows a whole new audience to experience a classic. So criterion number 2, a great remake caters to the nostalgia of the original fans while also attracting new players with modern standards and accessibility. Now, simply updating the graphics isn't enough. Criterion number 3 is all about redesigned experience. And by design, I don't just mean the visual overhaul, like character models or going from 2D to 3D. It's also crucially about the main gameplay mechanics. You usually need both to really justify the remake label, in my opinion. Look at GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64, a true classic. When it was remade for the Wii, the move to motion controls using the Wiimote was a valuable gameplay update, especially considering the, shall we say, unique ergonomics of the Nintendo 64 controller. But it wasn't just the controls. The Wii remake also modernized the scenario, the voice acting to fit the Daniel Craig era of James Bond, and they rebuild the environments from the ground up, expanding on the original. The Resident Evil remakes are another excellent example. The clunky tank controls of the originals were completely modernized, and they added new environmental layouts, cutscenes, and vastly improved graphics, all contributing to enhancing the survival horror atmosphere. As I've discussed in my other video, each of the Resident Evil remakes has brought a unique flavor to the genre. On the other hand, and I explained this also in another video, this is where the 3D remake of Secret of Mana, in my opinion, really stumbled. Yes, it went from 2D to a sort of 3D, and the soundtrack was reorchestrated, but the gameplay changes were minimal. The level layouts were exactly the same as in the Super Nintendo original game. Archaic mechanics like the ring menu, uneven combat rhythm, poor AI were kept largely untouched. It just felt unnecessary, or at best a missed opportunity. Its sequel remake, Trials of Mana, was much more successful precisely because they made all the necessary changes to the gameplay on top of a simple graphics overhaul. So criterion number 3, a compelling remake offers a genuinely redesigned experience, modernizing not just the visuals, but also, and often more importantly, the core gameplay mechanisms. Many might disagree with me, and there are of course a few exceptions, but the next point has to do with storytelling. For many games, the story and narration are a huge part of their identity. While you generally don't want to drastically change the setting, plot, characters, or themes to the point where it's a completely new game, a good remake should, in my opinion, definitely look at a new way of telling that same story. Think about it. Storytelling is all about how you present the narrative in the most immersive and impactful way. Inserting a flashback, playing with non-linear elements, giving more weight to certain characters or dialogues, or emphasizing certain themes can significantly change how a story is interpreted. And advancements in technology and available resources give developers a huge opportunity here. A good remake should really make the most of this to retell, not just repeat, a story that we already know works. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a masterclass in this regard. The main story progression is the same as the original, and familiar characters and scenes are instantly recognizable. But it also presents these events through new perspectives, adds new plot points, and expands on the lore in ways that create the potential for a very different overall experience. These additions are told so well because they create this intriguing ambiguity. Are we diverging from the original story, or are we simply getting new insights into elements that couldn't be fully explored the first time around? We saw this carry on into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which continued to expand on the original narrative, and the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy is fascinating and really worth developing elsewhere in another full video, because the new perspectives brought in Rebirth make us reconsider even more strongly if we are indeed facing a remake or something completely different. But in the end, especially if we are well aware of the lore, Square Enix is still carefully maintaining some doubt as to where we are situated compared to the original storyline. Even the Silent Hill 2 remake, as I discussed in my dedicated video, made some interesting choices in how it retold the story. Even the new Stillness ending offered a fresh perspective on James' journey. So criterion number 4, and that's probably the hardest to pull off for games nowadays considered as true classics. While the story of a remake might be more or less the same as the original, the storytelling needs to be different, and to show an intention, sometimes misguided, it's true, to give a fresh perspective to old and new players alike. Finally, when you put all these criteria together, what really makes a good remake? It's about bridging the gaps, not just the technical limitations of the original game, but also the gap between different generations of hardware and, more importantly, different generations of players. For us, older players who grew up with the originals, a good remake is filled with nostalgia. It lets us revisit beloved characters, environments, and emotions. But the best ones also give us something new, something that recreates that sense of discovery we felt way back then. Maybe it's expanded lore, unexpected story twists, more engaging gameplay, or stunning graphics. It can even help us reconnect with the magic of gaming in an industry that sometimes feels a bit too saturated and too repetitive. For new players who never experienced the originals, a good remake offers them the modern quality, technical prowess, and production value they're used to, applied to a story or concept that has already stood the test of time. It gives them a glimpse into what made certain franchises so important in video game history. A memorable scene, an iconic musical score, a unique atmosphere, or a beautiful story. And maybe, just maybe, it will even tempt them to go back and explore those original relics. When I look at the leaks of the so-called Oblivion Remaster, this is exactly what I feel. We have here more of a remake than a remaster. Enough time and legacy has passed, it can speak to both old and new players. Elements suggest the gameplay experience is also going to be redesigned to some extent, and while the storytelling and overall progression might remain very similar, and this is probably why the remaster seems to be the prevalent official terminology here, this new game seems to be bridging all the gaps, qualifying it as a proper remake. What do you all think? Does the upcoming Oblivion fit the bill? Did any of the remakes we've seen recently nail all those criteria? Are there any other factors you think are essential? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, you might like some of my in-depth original versus remake videos where I really analyze things in depth. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more retro and modern gaming insights. Thanks for watching.